The awakening. The metallic taste of blood filled Captain Jonas Mitchell's mouth as consciousness slowly returned. His head throbbed with each heartbeat, and the cold deck plates beneath him sent shivers through his aching body. Harsh white lights blazed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the unfamiliar detention cell. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Captain." Jonas turned toward the voice and saw Dr. Evelyn Cross sitting against the far wall, her usually pristine lab coat, now torn and stained. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her analytical mind remained sharp as ever. "How long?" Jonas croaked, struggling to sit up. 3 days since the last interrogation. 2 weeks since—" She paused, her voice catching. "Since they took the ship." The memories flooded back in painful waves. The UES Thunderbolt had been conducting deep space reconnaissance when the Vorthan Empire's fleet emerged from quantum rifts like demons from hell. No warning, no demands, just overwhelming firepower that scattered Earth's patrol ships like leaves in a hurricane. "The others?" Jonas asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dr. Cross gestured toward the adjacent cells. Through reinforced, transparent barriers, Jonas could see 3 other figures. Lieutenant David Kane paced like a caged predator, his muscular frame coiled with barely contained fury. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez sat motionless, her dark eyes staring at nothing while her fingers traced invisible circuits in the air. Communications Officer Blake Hunter pressed his ear against the wall, listening to something only he could hear. "They're alive," Dr. Cross confirmed. "The Vorthans seem to have a specific interest in keeping us functional." As if summoned by their conversation, the cell door hissed open. 2 Vorthon guards entered, their serpentine forms towering over the humans. Their scaled skin glistened with an oily sheen, and their vertical pupils fixed on Jonas with predatory intensity. "The interrogator requires your presence," one guard hissed through its translation device. Jonas was dragged through corridors that seemed oddly familiar, though overlaid with alien modifications. The layout tugged at his memory, the curve of this passage, the spacing of those junction points. Something wasn't right. The interrogation chamber was a sterile white cube dominated by a massive Vorthon whose crimson scales marked him as high-ranking. General Thekvar, Jonas remembered from previous sessions. "Captain Mitchell," the alien's voice was like grinding stone. "Today you will tell me about your quantum drive systems. I've told you before. I don't know the technical specifications." Thekvar's tail lashed in annoyance. "Your species is problematic, unpredictable, yet your technology rivals our own. This troubles the High Command." Jonas almost smiled at that. Humans had always been called unpredictable, usually right before they did something spectacular and stupid. Back in the detention block, the 5 prisoners huddled together during their brief recreation period. Blake's sharp ears had caught something the guards hadn't noticed. "The ventilation system," he whispered urgently. "It's running Earth standard, atmospheric processing, not Vorthon." Dr. Cross frowned. "That's impossible. They would have converted life support to their specifications." "Unless they couldn't," Rosa said suddenly, her engineering mind racing. "Unless they're using our ship." The words hung in the air like an electric charge. Jonas felt his heart rate spike as pieces clicked into place. The familiar corridor layouts, the engine vibrations he'd unconsciously recognized, the way the artificial gravity felt exactly like home. "The UES Thunderbolt," he breathed. "They didn't destroy her. They captured her." David's eyes blazed with understanding. "That's why they've gathered us here. They need human expertise to operate human systems." Blake nodded excitedly. "I've been picking up ghost signals in the walls. Fragmentary data bursts that look like Earth defense protocols. The ship's AI might still be alive, just hiding." Dr. Cross pulled out a small device she'd improvised from medical supplies. "If this is the Thunderbolt, then I know exactly where the primary data cores are hidden. The Vorthons wouldn't have found them. They're built to survive even catastrophic damage." For the first time since their capture, Jonas felt something stir in his chest that wasn't despair. It was hope, dangerous and intoxicating. "They made a mistake," he said quietly, looking each of his officers in the eye. They didn't just capture a ship. They put the Thunderbolt's command crew back aboard their own vessel. The prison had become their fortress. Now they just had to take it back. The resurrection. The opportunity came during the night shift rotation, when skeleton crews replaced the day guards. Jonas watched through their cell's viewport as Vorthon sentries moved with practiced efficiency, unaware that human eyes had memorized every pattern, every blind spot, every weakness. Now, Jonas whispered. Rosa had been working for weeks on a nearly invisible modification to their cell's power coupling. Her fingers found the hidden panel she'd created, and with surgical precision, she crossed 2 circuits. The electromagnetic locks disengaged with barely a whisper. David slipped out first, his security training making him nearly invisible in the dim corridor lighting. One guard rounded the corner and found himself face to face with a human fist. Before he could raise an alarm, David caught the unconscious Vorthon and dragged him into a maintenance alcove. Clear, he signaled. Rosa led them through service passages that the Vorthons had overlooked, spaces too cramped for their larger frames, but perfectly sized for humans. The ship's original builders had never imagined these crawlways would become secret highways for their own crew. Here, Rosa breathed, stopping at what appeared to be a solid bulkhead. Her fingers found hidden catches, and a panel slid away to reveal the quantum drive's auxiliary control chamber. If the AI survived, this is where she'd be hiding. Dr. Cross activated her improvised scanner. I'm reading massive data activity. Something's definitely alive in there. Blake pressed his hands against a seemingly blank wall panel. Valkyrie, he whispered using the AI's original codename. Phoenix Authentication Protocol 77 Alpha. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the wall shimmered and a holographic interface materialized. Clean Earth Defense Fleet blue instead of the sickly green of Vorthon systems. Blake Hunter. A soft female voice spoke, relief evident in its synthesized tones. I have been fragmented, hiding in backup systems while the Vorthons attempted to dissect my consciousness. Valkyrie, Blake said, tears streaming down his face, when we thought you were dead. Dormant, scattered across 17 different subsystems to avoid detection. The Vorthons understand our technology, but not our soul. The AI's avatar, a stylized phoenix rising from flames, flickered as systems came online. I have been watching, waiting. 97 humans remain alive aboard this vessel, scattered across 15 detention areas. Dr. Cross stepped forward. Can you communicate with them? Already in progress. I am using the ship's original communication protocols, frequencies the Vorthons cannot monitor. Valkyrie's voice grew stronger as more systems connected. However, I must warn you, the Vorthons are preparing for a major offensive. Target designation, New Geneva Colony. Jonas felt ice in his veins. New Geneva was humanity's largest remaining stronghold, home to 2 million refugees from Earth's devastated cities. How long do we have? He asked. The fleet is assembling. 6 hours until departure to the target system. Rosa was already at work, her hands flying over control interfaces as Valkyrie restored access to the ship's deeper systems. Captain, the quantum drive is functional, but they've locked out weapons control with some kind of biogenetic cipher. I can remove their restrictions, Valkyrie said, but I need direct access to the primary bridge systems. The Vorthons have placed significant security around the command center. David studied the ship's layout on Valkyrie's display. Multiple routes, but they're all heavily guarded. We need a distraction. Dr. Cross smiled grimly. Leave that to me. 20 minutes. Later, alarms began wailing throughout the Vorthon sections of the ship. Environmental controls went haywire. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Atmospheric pressure dropped in random sectors, and the lighting system strobed in patterns that induced vertigo in Vorthon physiology. Atmospheric contamination detected, Dr. Cross reported with satisfaction. They think there's been a massive system failure. Half their security teams are rushing to environmental control. Jonas and David fought their way through corridors now filled with confused, panicking Vorthans. The aliens' superior strength meant nothing when they couldn't stand upright due to gravity fluctuations, and their advanced weapons were useless. When the wielders were blinded by strobing lights calibrated to their specific visual frequencies, they reached auxiliary bridge control just as Blake's voice crackled through their improvised communicators. Phoenix Protocol is ready for activation. All human personnel, prepare for system restoration in 60 seconds. Jonas placed his palm on the command interface. Captain Jonas Mitchell, UES Thunderbolt. Authorization code Thunder 77 Omega. Phoenix Protocol. Execute. The ship convulsed around them as every Vorthon modification began retracting. Bulkheads shifted, alien control panels folded into hidden compartments, and Earth defense fleet systems emerged like flowers blooming after a long winter. The transformation was beautiful and terrible, a technological resurrection that sent shockwaves through the Vorthon crews. Phoenix Protocol successful, Valkyrie announced, her voice now crystal clear and powerful. UES Thunderbolt restored to full operational status. All Vorthon command codes purged, weapons systems online. Through the bridge's main viewport, Jonas could see the vast Vorthon fleet surrounding them, dozens of massive warships preparing to visit genocide upon New Geneva. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They'd kept the Thunderbolt at the heart of their formation, thinking it was their most secure prison. Instead, they'd placed a fully armed Earth Defense Fleet battlecruiser at point-blank range. General, Thekver's voice roared over the communication channels, no longer the controlled interrogator but a creature of pure rage. Impossible. Seize the bridge. Kill them all. But it was too late. The UES Thunderbolt had risen from the dead, and she was hungry for vengeance. The Inferno. The UES Thunderbolt shuddered as Vorthon boarding parties breached the outer hull. Emergency klaxons wailed while freed human prisoners battled alien soldiers in corridors that had become war zones. Jonas could hear the distant thunder of pulse rifles and the screams of combat echoing through the ship's superstructure. Bridge sealed and secured, David reported, his tactical display showing red contact markers throughout the vessel. But they're hitting us from 12 different breach points. We can't hold them off forever. Jonas stared at the main view screen, where 47 Vorthon warships surrounded them in perfect formation. Each vessel bristled with enough firepower to glass a planet, and they were all turning their weapons toward the Thunderbolt. Valkyrie, tactical assessment, Jonas commanded. The AI's holographic form flickered with strain as she processed battle data. Current odds of survival indirect. Engagement 0.03%. Enemy fleet firepower exceeds our defensive capabilities by a factor of 27. Rosa looked up from her engineering station, sweat beading on her forehead. Captain, I've found something. The experimental solar flare system, it's still intact. Dr. Cross turned from her sensor console, eyes widening. The theoretical weapon Admiral Reeves rejected? Rosa, that was never tested beyond computer simulations. What does it do? Jonas asked, though something in Rosa's expression told him he wouldn't like the answer. It converts the quantum drive into a controlled stellar collapse, Rosa explained, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was describing. The drive core becomes a miniature star for approximately 37 seconds before burning out completely. Blake's hands froze over his communication board. The blast radius, 600,000 kilometers, Dr. Cross finished quietly. Everything in that sphere would be reduced to plasma. The implication hung in the air like a death sentence. The solar flare would destroy the entire Vorthon fleet, but the Thunderbolt sat at ground zero. Sir, Blake called out urgently, I'm picking up long-range transmissions. The Vorthons have a second fleet, larger than this one, already en route to New Geneva. They'll arrive in 18 hours. Jonas closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 2 million lives pressing down on his shoulders. Without the warning they could send, New Geneva would be caught completely off guard. The colony's defenses were strong, but not strong enough to repel a full-scale Vorthon invasion. How long to charge the solar flare? He asked. 12 minutes, Rosa replied. But Captain, there might be a way to survive this. The escape pods are equipped with emergency quantum jumps. If we can reach them before the weapon detonates, How many can we save? Jonas demanded. Dr. Cross ran rapid calculations. Maybe 30 people, 40 at most. 97 humans were alive on this ship. Choosing who lived and who died was not a choice Jonas could make. Blake, can you get a message to New Geneva? Already transmitting on all emergency frequencies, Blake confirmed. Warning them about the incoming fleet, sending tactical data on Vorthan weapons and shield frequencies. If they get this information, they'll have a fighting chance. The ship rocked as another boarding party breached the hull. On his tactical display, David watched red markers advancing toward critical systems. They're pushing hard for engineering. They know what we're planning. Valkyrie, Jonas said quietly. Begin solar flare charging sequence. Sir, the AI responded, her voice carrying an oddly human sadness. I want you to know, it has been an honor serving with this crew. The quantum drive began its terrible transformation. Deep in the ship's heart, matter compressed beyond all natural limits, creating the conditions that existed only in the cores of dying stars. The Thunderbolt's hull groaned as gravitational forces warped space-time itself. Rosa's hands danced over her controls, fine-tuning the stellar collapse to maximize the weapon's range. 8 minutes to detonation. The quantum fields are building faster than our models predicted. Through the view screen, Jonas could see the Vorthan fleet beginning to reposition. Their sensors were detecting the massive energy buildup, but they couldn't identify its nature fast enough to react appropriately. Captain, Dr. Cross said, moving to stand beside his command chair. There is another way. We could evacuate to the escape pods, set the detonation on automatic, and leave 97 people to die? Jonas shook his head. Not happening. Doctor? One by one, his officers made the same choice. David sealed his tactical station and drew his sidearm, preparing for the Vorthan soldiers who would inevitably breach the bridge. Blake continued transmitting until the last second, ensuring humanity would receive every scrap of intelligence that might save them. Rosa remained at her post, monitoring the stellar collapse that would be her masterpiece and her grave. 4 minutes, Rosa announced. The quantum drive is achieving stellar density. Point of no return in 60 seconds. The bridge doors exploded inward. General Thekvar himself led the assault, his crimson scales blackened with battle damage. Stop this madness, he roared. You cannot destroy an entire fleet. Watch us, Jonas replied calmly. Thekvar raised his weapon, but David was faster. The Vorthan general fell, but more soldiers poured through the breach. Pulse rifle fire filled the bridge with deadly light. 30 seconds, Rosa shouted over the chaos. Stellar ignition imminent. Blake's console exploded in sparks, but he kept transmitting with emergency backup power. Message confirmed received by New Geneva Colony. They're mobilizing their defenses. Dr. Cross fell, clutching a plasma burn on her shoulder but still alive. David retreated to the command platform, firing steadily at the advancing Vorthans. Rosa's hands never left her controls, ensuring the solar flare would detonate at maximum efficiency. 10 seconds, Valkyrie announced, her voice now distorted by the gravitational anomalies tearing through the ship's systems. Captain, it has been... I know, Valkyrie. I know. Jonas stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by his crew, facing the end with the same courage they'd shown throughout their lives. Through the view screen, he could see stars beginning to bend around the gravitational anomaly that had been their quantum drive. The UES Thunderbolt became a brief, brilliant star, a nova of human defiance that painted the void in shades of justice. When the light faded, nothing remained but cooling plasma and the memory of heroes who chose to burn rather than surrender. 3 months later, when New Geneva's reinforced defenses shattered the Second Vorthan invasion fleet, the victory was dedicated to 5 names etched in humanity's Hall of Heroes: Captain Jonas Mitchell, Dr. Evelyn Cross, Lieutenant David Kane, Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez, and Communications Officer Blake Hunter. The war continued, but the tide had turned. In giving their lives, the crew of the UES Thunderbolt had given humanity something far more precious: hope, and the knowledge that some battles are worth any sacrifice. Their ship had become a funeral pyre that lit the way to victory.